The signal from the stars. The stars were quiet that night. Deep in space, on a small moon near the edge of the Orion sector, the old Earth listening station beeped once, then twice. Then it screamed. A red light flashed across the dusty control room. Computers buzzed to life. The signal came from a place no ship had visited in years, Sector 9 Delta, also known as the Dead Zone. Most people thought nothing lived out there, but the signal was real, and it wasn't random. It was a voice. Help us, please. Help. Back on Earth, no one seemed to care. The Galactic Alliance reviewed the transmission and marked it as a probable glitch. False signal, the report said. Ignore and delete. But one man didn't ignore it. His name was Commander Jack Harper. He used to fly warships in the Battle of the Red Moons. Now he lived alone in a quiet dome on Mars, surrounded by desert and silence. He was tired of war, tired of noise. But the moment he heard the voice, something inside him changed. He played the signal again. We are the lost sisters. They're hunting us. Only one. Please. The voice was soft, female, and full of fear, but there was something else. Hope. It wasn't just noise. It was real. Jack leaned back in his chair and stared at the stars through his dome's glass roof. He still had his old ship, the Phoenix. It hadn't flown in years, but it was strong, like him. He pulled out a dusty crate from under his floor. Inside was a flight suit, a sidearm, and a badge with his old rank. Looks like it's time to fly again, he whispered. 2 days later, the Phoenix launched into space with Jack at the controls. The engines groaned, but the ship held steady. He checked his course, straight to Sector 9 Delta. No one had answered the sister's cry. No one except him. As he reached the edge of the known galaxy, Jack noticed something strange. A storm in space, black and swirling, full of energy. But this wasn't a natural storm. It was made. Before he could turn, the ship was pulled in. Lights flashed. Systems failed. Jack held on tight as the ship shook like a toy. Sparks flew from the control panel. The storm screamed like it had a voice of its own. Then, silence. Jack opened his eyes. The storm was gone. His ship floated in a dead zone, engines barely working. But on his radar, a small object blinked. An old satellite. Jack flew closer. The satellite was broken and spinning, but still sending a weak signal. He pulled it into the cargo bay and scanned it. Inside was part of the same message he'd heard before. But now there was more. Beware the hunters. They use the signal as bait. Help us, or we die. Jack's eyes narrowed. A trap, he muttered. Someone was using the sister's cry for help to lure ships in. To catch them. Maybe to destroy them. But Jack wasn't turning back. He checked his star maps and flew to the last known location the signal had pointed to. A dead planet covered in ash and silence. He landed on the surface. The air was thin, the sky red. He walked through the ruins of what looked like a temple. Statues of tall, graceful women lined the path. Each had her eyes closed, hands over her heart. Jack found a necklace half buried in the dust. It was warm, like it had just been dropped. He picked it up, heart beating fast. Someone had been here recently. Maybe still was. Suddenly, his comm crackled. A voice whispered, weak and distant. They're coming. Run. Jack spun around, hand on his sidearm, but the wind answered with silence. He didn't run. Back on his ship, Jack replayed the message over and over. He zoomed in on the last part of the signal. A set of coordinates appeared, one step deeper into the dead zone. Jack stared at the screen. Everyone else had ignored the cry. Everyone else was too afraid. But not him. Hold on, he whispered. I'm coming. The Phoenix powered up, rising from the dusty surface. The stars ahead looked cold and endless, but Jack didn't flinch, because even if it was a trap, even if no one else would help, he would. He was human, and he never left anyone behind. Journey into darkness. The dark space beyond Sector 9 Delta didn't feel like space at all. It felt like a grave. Quiet. Cold. Watching. Jack Harper sat alone in the cockpit of the Phoenix, eyes scanning the endless black. The coordinates from the signal glowed softly on his screen. Closer now. But something was wrong. The stars ahead flickered like candles about to go out. Without warning, the sky twisted. Jack's ship jolted sideways as if something had grabbed it. Alarms screamed. A swirling storm of black energy formed ahead, a vortex made of shadows and lightning. Jack had flown through asteroid belts and plasma fields, but this was alive. He gritted his teeth and pulled the controls hard, trying to escape the pull. But it was too late. The Phoenix was sucked in. Inside the vortex, time didn't move right. Seconds felt like hours. Lights flickered. Static filled the air like whispers in the dark. Jack saw flashes outside the window. Strange shapes, maybe ships, maybe monsters. One looked like a face, crying. He shut his eyes and focused. "Come on, baby, hold together," he said to his ship. With a final shake, the storm spat him out. The ship spun, systems fried. The stars were gone. In their place was a dead field. Broken metal, lost satellites, and bones. It was a graveyard of ships. Hundreds, maybe thousands, all wrecked and drifting. Jack floated among ghosts. His comms were down. His oxygen backup was failing. But on the scanner, a weak signal blinked. It was coming from one of the dead satellites nearby. Jack steered the Phoenix, slowly, carefully, through the wreckage. Pieces of warships floated past, torn open like paper. Who had done this? He reached the satellite. It was ancient, barely working. But as he pulled it aboard, something clicked. A soft voice, low and afraid, whispered from the speaker. "Don't trust the light. They pretend to help. They wear friendly faces, but they eat souls." Jack froze. It was a warning. But who was they? He checked the signal history. There had been dozens of messages sent out, dozens of cries for help, and each one had been followed by silence. No rescue, no survivors, just wrecked ships and more whispers. Then something caught his eye. A name. Namia. It was written in the message tag. Jack repeated it out loud. The ship's AI, weak but still working, responded. Namia. Female. Species unknown. Status. Last signal sent 36 hours ago. Location. Planet Corella. Jack pulled up the map. Corella was just beyond the debris field. A dead world. No colonies, no known life. "Not dead anymore," Jack muttered, turning the ship. As he flew, the silence grew heavier. His thoughts wandered. Who were the lost sisters? What were they running from? Why was no one else helping? That's when he saw it. A temple. Hidden on the planet's side, buried in black stone and smoke, was a ruin. It looked just like the one from before. Statues of tall, graceful women lined the entrance, but these were broken. Heads smashed, arms missing. Burn marks everywhere. Jack landed the Phoenix nearby, grabbed his gear, and stepped out. The air was toxic. He wore a mask. Inside the temple, it was dark. Dust clung to every surface. But deep within, he found something, a trail of silver blood. Not red, not human. Jack followed it. It led to a chamber with a cracked crystal bed. Inside was no one, but next to it lay a small, glowing pendant. It pulsed softly, like a heartbeat. When Jack picked it up, the voice returned, this time clearer. "Namia, please, if anyone is listening." Jack clutched the pendant tightly. The voice was close. Real. Still alive. Suddenly, the ground shook. From behind, a sound like metal scraping against bone echoed down the hallway. Jack raised his sidearm, slowly backing up. A dark figure appeared in the doorway. Tall, thin, with silver eyes and long, tangled hair. It was her. Namia. But she looked afraid. Not of him. Of something behind her. She staggered forward and collapsed in his arms. "You came," she whispered. Jack stared at her. She looked so human, yet not. Her skin glowed faintly. Her eyes shimmered like starlight. She was beautiful, but broken. "Who did this to you?" he asked. She opened her mouth, but only one word came out. "Hunters." The chamber shook again. Dust fell from the ceiling. Jack knew they had to leave. Now. He carried Namia back to the ship as shadows moved in the ruins behind them. His heart pounded. The Phoenix powered up. Engines roared. As they lifted into the sky, Jack looked back at the ruined temple. More were coming. He could feel it. But now he wasn't just chasing a signal. Now he was protecting someone. And he wasn't turning back. The trap and the truth. Namia slept, but her face did not rest. Even in unconsciousness, fear twisted her brow, and her fingers clenched the edge of the cot as if bracing for more pain. Jack Harper watched her from the pilot's chair, hands gripping the ship's controls tighter than he realized. Every now and then, her silver eyes opened just a little, just enough to whisper, "Run." But Jack wasn't running. He'd seen enough war to know when someone was hunted. Namia was no soldier, no criminal, just scared, hurt. He didn't know what she was exactly, but he knew this. Someone powerful wanted her gone. And they weren't done yet. The Phoenix flew low across the frozen desert of Corella's northern edge, skimming through the fog like a ghost. Jack didn't trust orbit. Too easy to be seen. Too easy to be tracked. The sky above was quiet, too quiet. Every scanner pulse came back clean, but it felt wrong. Like the calm before the storm. He adjusted the ship's filters and scanned for life signs. Nothing. Except a soft ping. One signal. Faint. Not far. It was coming from a crashed ship, burned, broken, and buried in the sand like a forgotten bone. Jack landed nearby, carefully stepping out with his weapon ready. Inside the wreckage, he found only silence. But then he saw it. A cage. Not just any cage. A holding cell built for a living being. The door was torn open, but the blood stains on the wall said the last occupant didn't escape easily. Jack turned sharply. Something moved. From behind the wreck, figures stepped out, slender, tall, wearing fake smiles. Their armor glimmered like mirrors, faces too perfect, too smooth, and every one of them had eyes like ice. "Found you," said one. Jack raised his gun, but it didn't matter. They didn't flinch. "We're here for the girl," the voice said again. Calm. Cold. "Hand her over. No need for anyone else to die." Jack didn't move. "Who are you?" The lead figure tilted its head. "Collectors. We collect special things. And she is very, very special." Jack took one slow step back. "She's not yours." "No," said the voice. "But she's not yours either." In a flash, one of them moved, inhumanly fast, swinging a blade of light toward Jack's head. He dodged barely in time and fired. The shot hit center mass. The figure didn't fall. It laughed. Jack ran. Blaster bolts hissed through the air as he dove into the Phoenix. The ship's shields activated just in time to block the next shot. Namia woke with a gasp, sitting up, panic in her eyes. "They found us," she said. "I noticed," Jack grunted, slamming the ship into liftoff. As they blasted into the upper sky, Namia pressed her hands to the console. The lights flickered, then glowed stronger. "You're doing that?" Jack asked. She nodded weakly. "I can boost some things, but it costs me." Jack looked at her, really looked. She wasn't just running. She was hiding something deeper. "What are you?" he asked softly. Namia didn't answer right away. Her voice trembled when she did. "We were healers, dream shapers. We touched minds, soothed pain, helped others feel again. That was our gift." "And they want that?" Jack asked. They want to sell it, she whispered, to the highest bidder. Our abilities turned into weapons. Jack felt something burn in his chest. Rage, not for war or revenge, but for her. For all of them. You said we, he said. Are there more? She nodded. My sisters. Taken. Some are still alive. I can feel them. Faint, but still out there. Jack pulled up a hidden scanner, one he'd stolen years ago from a black market dealer. It searched energy signatures tied to living neural frequencies. Illegal tech. Dangerous. Perfect. He activated it. And then he saw it. Blips. Tiny, pulsing blips across the galaxy. 7 of them. Each one a living mind, broadcasting a cry too soft for machines to hear, but not too soft for someone who cared. Namia pointed at one. There. That's Lyra. They're holding her, in the trade station orbiting Talon Prime. The auction is soon. Auction. Jack's jaw tightened. She met his eyes. They sell us like pets. Jack stared at the map, then at Namia. He wasn't a hero. Not anymore. But something inside him refused to walk away. Not now. He turned the ship. Then let's crash their party. The humans vow. The stars over Talon Prime did not shine. They shimmered like broken glass. The planet below spun with bright lights, tall towers, and silent screams. It looked like a dream, but it wasn't. It was a place where people disappeared, a place where lives were bought and sold like tools, like animals. Jack Harper had been here once before, long ago during the war. He remembered the smell of burnt metal, the echo of gunfire in the streets, and the lies whispered in the shadows. Nothing had changed. The colors were brighter, but the filth ran deeper. This time, Jack wasn't wearing his flight suit or carrying a gun in the open. He wore the cloak of a traitor, gray, dusty, and forgettable. Beside him, Namia walked with her head low, hidden under a hood. Her skin still glowed faintly, a starlight blue, but the cloak covered her light. She hated it. Jack could tell. She had once been proud to shine. They walked through the lower bazaar of Talon Prime, past stalls selling everything from laser spices to frozen moonworms. Music played, but no one danced. Laughter echoed, but no one smiled. This was the kind of place where hope died in silence. Jack stopped in front of a tall black building with no windows and only one door. A silver symbol above it spun slowly. A twisted S, the mark of the Slavers' Syndicate. This is it, he said. Namia shivered. Lyra is in there. I can feel her. Jack turned to her. Stay close. No matter what happens, don't speak. Don't glow. Don't run. She nodded, but her hands trembled. Inside, the building was worse. Too clean. Too white. Like a hospital that had never saved a life. A tall woman with silver eyes met them at the door. Do you have a bidding code? She asked. Jack handed her a forged ID. Code 77 Shadow. I'm here for something rare. The woman scanned the card. Follow me. They were led through a long hall lined with glass cells. Inside each one, a prisoner. Some looked human, some not. All quiet, all staring with empty eyes. Jack's jaw tightened. At the end of the hall, a heavy door opened with a hiss. Inside was a round room with dark seats, a bright center, and a stage. A hologram above read, Rare Empath Auction. 1 night only. Namia stopped walking. Her breathing grew short. She's close. Jack held her hand without looking. His grip was steady. From the shadows, rich voices spoke. That one's too old. The small one might be useful. Empath power. Let's test it. Guards brought out a young girl, barely 15. Silver eyes, skin like soft crystal. Lyra, Namia gasped. A guard slapped the girl across the face. Jack didn't move. Not yet. The auction began. Numbers were shouted. Credits offered. The bidding climbed fast. Jack stepped forward. 500,000 credits, he said. Gasps filled the room. The auctioneer blinked. Going once. Going twice. Another voice rose. Cold. Sharp. 1 million. Jack turned to see a familiar face. Commander Varel. Former bounty hunter. Now a slaver king. And Jack's old enemy. Harper. Varel sneered. Didn't know you liked collecting pretty things. Jack didn't speak. He walked toward the stage. Varel laughed. Still playing the hero. No, Jack said. I'm playing the human. He reached into his cloak and pulled a small cube. He slammed it onto the ground. A flash. A pulse. Then chaos. Smoke filled the room. Lights shattered. People screamed. Jack grabbed Lyra and Nemia and ran. Guards fired blindly. Jack returned fire with sharp aim. Each shot counted. No waste. They burst into the hallway. Alarms howled. Jack led them to a service tunnel. Nemia held Lyra's hand. The girl was crying. You came, she whispered. Nemia nodded, her tears shining like stars. Outside, the Phoenix was already waiting. Its AI had followed Jack's signal and landed in stealth mode. They jumped aboard just as more guards appeared, weapons drawn. Jack didn't hesitate. The ship launched. Back into space. Back into the black. Lyra lay in Nemia's arms, safe for now. Jack slumped into his chair, heart pounding. He had done it. He had pulled a child out of hell. But it wasn't over. He turned to Nemia. Where are the others? She closed her eyes, reaching out with her mind. They're scattered. Weak. Afraid. But alive. Jack nodded slowly. Then we find them all. She looked at him. Why? You don't have to do this. Jack stared at the stars. Because I'm the only one who will. The prison break. The cold expanse of space stretched ahead like an endless desert. Jack Harper didn't look out the window. His eyes were focused on the holographic map flickering in front of him. Corella's moon had been left behind, but the next stop was far more dangerous. A prison colony called Carthos, a place so remote that even the Galactic Alliance had forgotten it existed. This was where the slavers had taken the remaining lost sisters, and where Jack had to go next. He didn't care about the dangers. He didn't care about the odds. Jack had made a promise. Lyra's stable for now, Nemia said quietly, looking over at the girl curled up in the corner. But we can't stay in open space for long. The slavers know we've escaped. Jack nodded, his jaw tight. They couldn't risk staying in one place too long. The Phoenix wasn't a stealth ship, and any decent hunter could track it. They had to get to Carthos quickly and rescue the rest of the sisters before the syndicate closed in. A low, rhythmic hum echoed through the ship as Jack checked the fuel levels. They didn't have much, but they didn't need much either. If all went according to plan, they wouldn't need to leave the atmosphere. Jack's fingers hovered over the controls. He had been through prison breaks before. On both sides of the law. This wouldn't be any different, except this time, he wasn't breaking people out for money. He was doing it for them. For Nemia. For the sisters. We're going in hot, Jack muttered. Prepare for a rough landing. Nemia stood by the cockpit, her silver eyes focused, her mind reaching out. We'll need the help of the others. I can feel them, but they're weaker now. They're scared. Jack felt a rush of anger. Scared. They were supposed to be healers, powerful empaths. And yet, here they were, trapped in a prison, their abilities turned against them. Jack's hand tightened around the ship's controls. They dropped out of warp space with a sudden jolt, coming out just above the barren surface of Carthos. The planet was a large prison-run world, nothing more than a rock covered in heavy fences and guarded towers. The entire moon was encased in a thick atmosphere, making it difficult for ships to approach undetected. But Jack wasn't here to sneak in. He was here to break through. The planet's defense system lit up, and alarms blared. Jack slammed the throttle forward, sending the Phoenix hurtling toward the surface. He had no choice now. They were spotted. "Get ready," Jack shouted as the ship began shaking violently. The air crackled with the energy from anti-air cannons as they rained down fire, but Jack was too quick, twisting and weaving the ship through the incoming shots. Namia held onto the console, her body rigid. She had shut her eyes, trying to focus her power. Jack didn't know exactly what she was doing, but he trusted her. They hit the surface hard, scraping against the planet's cracked ground, kicking up clouds of dust and debris. The ship rattled. Alarms screamed, but the landing gear held. They had crashed, but they were alive. "Everyone out," Jack barked, pulling open the hatch. The cold air on Carthos hit them like a punch, but Jack didn't stop. He grabbed his weapon and helped Lyra out of the ship. "Move, move, move." Namia followed close behind, glancing around. She could feel them now. Their presence. The other sisters were here. Close. The guards didn't know what hit them. The Phoenix had come down in a low-security zone, but even that didn't stop the prison's defenders from rushing toward them. Jack was fast, too fast. His shots were clean and efficient, no wasted movements. He took out one guard, then another, moving with a precision that only years of combat could teach. Namia was right behind him, not with a gun, but with power. Her hands glowed faintly as she reached out, manipulating the air around the guards, causing their weapons to freeze or their bodies to slow down. She didn't kill anyone, but she didn't need to. She just needed to buy Jack time. They raced toward the nearest prison block, following the signal from Namia's mind. The entire facility was a maze, but Jack knew how to move fast in enemy territory. He had been trained for this. As they entered the holding chamber, the temperature dropped sharply. This was the heart of Carthos, a dark and cold place. Inside were rows of small cells, each one occupied by a figure huddled on the floor. Namia's eyes widened. She could sense them all now. Their pain, their fear, their hope. The sisters. There, she pointed to the far end of the hall, where a familiar figure lay shackled, her silver eyes faint but visible through the bars. "Zora. She's one of us." Jack didn't waste time. He reached for the control panel and hacked the system, the door clicking open with a soft hiss. Zora looked up, confused at first, then relief flooded her face. "You came," she whispered, standing slowly. I never thought anyone would come." "You're safe now," Jack said, pulling her out of the cage. "We're getting you all out." But as he turned to leave, the sound of boots echoed down the hall. They weren't alone. "We've got company," Jack muttered, his eyes scanning the hallway. More guards appeared at the far end, weapons raised. But Jack didn't hesitate. He moved toward the door, pulling the sisters close. "Time to go," he said, already running. The Queen's last hope. The journey from Carthos to the unknown moon took far longer than Jack had hoped. The ship's engines had taken a beating during the escape, and now they were limping through space at half their usual speed. It was quiet inside the ship, too quiet. Lyra and the other sisters were resting in the back, and Namia sat by the control panel, her eyes closed in concentration. She was tired, but her connection to the other sisters, to the life force of their kind, was growing stronger. "We're almost there," Jack muttered, staring out the window into the vast, empty darkness. "Just hold on." The moon they were heading toward was small, barely a dot on the star map. But there was something about it, a feeling that Jack couldn't shake. The coordinates Namia had given him had led them here, deep into a section of space, untouched by war or civilization. It was a dead moon, desolate and uncharted. Yet, Namia had sensed something powerful beneath its surface, something that could save them all. "We're here," Jack said as he pulled the ship into orbit, scanning for any sign of life. "There," Namia said, her voice soft but urgent. "The signal's stronger now. We have to land." Jack didn't need to ask any more questions. He trusted Namia, trusted her instincts. The sisters were his mission now, and the weight of their lives rested heavily on his shoulders. If this moon held the answers, if there was a way to free them from the slavers' chains forever, then Jack was ready to face whatever waited below. As they descended through the thick clouds, the surface of the moon revealed itself. It was unlike anything Jack had ever seen. Ancient structures buried in rock, twisted metal that seemed to pulse with strange energy, and a massive crystal tower rising from the ground like a beacon. The air outside was thin, cold, and sharp, but inside the ship, Namia's presence was warm, guiding him toward their destination. "This is it," she said, voice barely a whisper. Jack didn't speak. He knew better than to ask too many questions now. There was no time for doubts, no time for second guesses. They had come this far. The ship landed with a soft thud, kicking up dust as they touched down near the towering crystal. Jack and Namia exited the ship, the wind biting at their faces as they moved toward the structure. The walls of the crystal tower gleamed in the low light, glowing faintly as though alive. Jack could feel the pulse of energy in the air, a hum that resonated deep in his chest. "What is this place?" he asked, looking around. "It's the heart of our kind," Namia said. "It's where we were born, where our powers were awakened, and it's where we will find the one who can save us." Jack frowned. "The Queen." Namia nodded, her face filled with a mixture of hope and fear. "Yes, the Queen of the Lost Sisters. She has the power to heal us, to help us find the strength to fight back. But she is dying, Jack. The parasite inside her is consuming her life force." Jack's heart clenched at the thought. He had seen what the slavers did to people, how they used them, tortured them for their powers. But the Queen was something different. She was the heart of their race, the one who could save them all. Without her, the sisters were lost. They reached the entrance of the tower, and Namia placed her hand against the crystal door. It shuddered and then slid open with a low hum. Inside was darkness, but it was not the empty, hollow kind. It was filled with a presence, an energy that seemed to wrap around Jack like a cloak. They stepped inside. At the center of the chamber lay a massive crystal bed, glowing with a soft, warm light. In the center of the bed, the Queen of the Lost Sisters lay, her body pale and frail, her once radiant skin now dull and cracked. Her silver eyes flickered weakly as she raised her head, sensing their presence. "Namia," the Queen whispered, "you have come." Namia knelt beside the bed, tears welling in her eyes. "We've come to save you, my Queen. We've come to stop the slavers." The Queen smiled faintly. "It's too late for me, but not for you." Jack stepped forward, his gaze locked on the Queen. She was beautiful, even in her weakened state, her presence filled with a quiet, powerful strength. But there was something else in her eyes, something Jack recognized. The same sadness that had been in Namia's eyes, the weight of a world collapsing. "No," Jack said, shaking his head. "You're not giving up. We're not giving up." The Queen's gaze softened. "You are brave, human, but you do not understand the cost. The parasite inside me has drained my strength for too long. Without the crystal heart, I will not survive." "Where is it?" Jack asked, urgency in his voice. "We'll find it. We'll save you." The Queen's eyes closed, and she sighed, her breath shallow. "The heart. It is in the core of this tower, but you must be careful. The parasite has twisted the tower's power. Only the purest of heart can reach the crystal." Jack clenched his fists. "I'll do it. I'll do whatever it takes." Namia looked at him, her voice trembling. "You may not survive the journey." Jack didn't hesitate. "Then I'll die trying." Humanity rises. The Queen's chamber was still, the air thick with the heavy weight of impending loss. Jack stood before the massive crystal, feeling its pulse like a heartbeat. It was ancient, powerful, but also dying. The parasite inside the Queen was consuming it, and with each passing moment, the life force of the sisters drained further. "You need to hurry," Namia whispered. "The tower is changing." The parasite is making it harder to reach the crystal. Jack nodded. I'm ready. He turned to the queen, who was lying motionless on her crystal bed, her eyes barely open. She had given him one final command: retrieve the crystal heart from the tower's core. But she had also warned him the parasite would fight him every step of the way. He had to be pure of heart, something Jack didn't understand fully but was willing to try. He took a deep breath and stepped forward, his boots echoing in the silence as he neared the crystal at the center of the chamber. It pulsed like it was alive, its light flickering with each step Jack took toward it. Nemia, still kneeling beside the queen, watched him with hope but also fear. Jack placed his hand on the crystal. The moment his skin made contact, the entire chamber shook, the light from the crystal blinding. A cold, unnatural wind howled around him, and a voice, low, monstrous, and almost familiar, whispered from the depths of the tower. You think you can save her? You think you can stop me? The parasite. It was alive, a sentient force that had taken root in the very heart of the sisters' home. It knew Jack was there. It knew he wasn't one of them. Jack clenched his teeth and refused to back down. I'm not here for you. I'm here for them. The voice of the parasite hissed in anger, sending a pulse of dark energy toward Jack. He grunted and staggered back, but he didn't let go of the crystal. Instead, he focused all his thoughts on the queen and the sisters, their hopes, their lives, their pain. He had seen the fear in their eyes, the desperation, but most of all, he had seen their strength. They weren't broken. They were survivors. You're too weak, the parasite growled, its voice reverberating in Jack's mind. Jack closed his eyes. He wasn't weak. He was human, and that was enough. He took another step forward, reaching deeper into the crystal's core. The parasite tried again, sending a wave of energy so powerful it felt like it could tear Jack apart. His body shook, his muscles burned, but still, he didn't let go. Suddenly, the crystal pulsed with a brilliant light, and the energy surged outward. Jack felt something within himself snap, a connection forming between him and the heart of the tower. The parasite screamed, its form twisting and shrieking, but Jack held firm. He could feel the power of the crystal filling him. Strength, clarity, determination. Then, in a single breathtaking moment, the parasite was gone. Jack collapsed to his knees, the crystal now glowing with a soft, warm light. He had done it. He had freed the queen. He had freed the sisters. A low murmur rose from behind him. Nemia was standing, her eyes wide with awe and relief. It's gone. You did it. Jack stood slowly, his body still trembling from the energy of the crystal. He turned to face Nemia, his heart racing. I don't feel like a hero, he said, his voice rough. But I couldn't leave you all to die. Nemia smiled, a tear sliding down her cheek. You're more than a hero. You're a savior. Together, they turned back to the queen, whose eyes were now open, shining with life and power. Her silver eyes locked onto Jack's. You have freed us, she said softly, her voice filled with gratitude. You have given us hope. Jack smiled back, though it was a tired smile. He didn't need praise. He had done what was right. He had saved them. But now, as he looked at the queen and the sisters gathered around him, he knew that their journey was far from over. The parasite was gone, but the slavers who had caused all this pain were still out there. The galaxy was still broken, still full of people who needed help, and Jack was ready to face it all. He glanced up at the stars, the vast, endless black, filled with both danger and possibility. He wasn't alone anymore. He had allies. He had friends, and together they could rebuild. The sisters had their queen back. They had their power. And Jack, well, he was ready to fight for them, for all of humanity. I'm with you, he said, his voice steady now. Let's take back what's ours.